So we're going to continue with some challenging composite function questions if the previous composite function questions weren't challenging enough. Then we're going to look at the final part of functions that we're going to look at in this topic. Okay, so let's take different functions. The first function called h of x takes x, and then it does this. It takes it to 3x over x minus 1. K of x is going to be x squared. So it just takes x and it squares it. So let's look at the composite function hk of x. If you think you're happy with what's gone on so far, maybe pause the video and do this yourself. Otherwise, well, let's think about it. X goes through k, and then that answer goes through h. When x goes through k, we get x squared. So we're going to put x squared through h. H of x squared. Well, h of x squared, let's think about what h of dog is again, just to kind of get us back familiar with this idea, what happens when we put something through the function. H of dog is going to be 3 lots of dog over dog minus 1. So h of x squared, maybe pause the video if you haven't already and try this. H of x squared is going to be 3 lots of x squared over x squared minus 1. So this function, 3x squared over x squared minus 1, is the composite function hk of x. What is the composite function kh of x? Well, this hopefully you know is slightly different, because you, instead of putting x through k and then that answer through h, you put x through h and then put that answer through k. Well, what happens when we put x through h? Well, we end up with 3x over x minus 1, and we're going to put 3x over x minus 1 through k. When we put 3x over x minus 1 through k, well, k of dog would just be dog squared, so k of 3x over x minus 1 is just going to be 3x over x minus 1 all squared. So this is the composite function kh of x. Okay. Right. I think what we're going to do now is look at the domains of functions. Okay? The domain we can define as what goes into the function. And sometimes certain numbers are not allowed into the function. Otherwise, they will break it. So certain numbers can't go into the functions, otherwise they will break the function. I'll show you what I mean by that. So h of x equals 3x over x minus 1, as it did before. What happens if x is 1? What happens if x is 1? What happens when we put x of 1 into the function? Well, let's look at h of 1. H of 1, well, that's 3 times by 1 divided by 1 minus 1. This is 3 times 1, well, 3 over 0. 3 divided by 0. You can't divide by 0. So if we put 1 into the function, it breaks the function. You're not allowed to divide by 0. So what we say is that x equals 1 must be excluded from the domain. Now what I mean by that is x equals 1 can't go into the function. Must be excluded from the domain. The domain is what goes into the function. So x equals 1 can't go into the function. That's what that sentence means. So you might see this notation sometimes. H of x is equal to 3x over x minus 1, but x cannot be 1. So we say this is the function, but x can't be 1, otherwise it breaks. And there are lots of questions I've seen before in IGCSE papers where you will get the function and they will say what must be excluded from the domain. X equals 1 must be excluded from the domain. There are 2 types of questions for excluding things from the domain. The option where you end up dividing by 0 and you're not allowed to divide by 0, and the second option, which we're going to look at now. So let's take a new function, let's call it f, and f of x is equal to the square root of x minus 6. Okay. So, the second type of question where you have to exclude things from the domain at IGCSE is this kind of square root function. Now, we cannot square root a negative number. This is not possible for now. You can't square root a negative number. So the square root of negative 4 doesn't exist. The square root of 4 is 2, but the square root of negative 4 doesn't exist. If you try it on your calculator, you get maths error. Okay, so we ask the question, when is x minus 6 negative? Because we cannot square root a negative number. So when are we going to square root a negative number? Well, that will be when x minus 6 is negative, and that is when x minus 6 is less than 0. We could solve this inequality. So if we solve it, we get x is less than 6. If x is less than 6, then we're going to be square rooting a negative number. For example, if x is 4, 4 minus 6 is minus 2, we're square rooting a negative number. If x is 5.5, 5.5 take away 6 is negative 0.5, we'd be square rooting a negative number. We can't square root a negative number. So, this means that x less than 6 must be excluded from the domain. We cannot put anything that is less than 6 into the function, otherwise we'd be square rooting a negative number, so we must exclude x less than 6 from the domain. These are the two types of questions you get about domains: times when you divide by 0 and times when you have to square root a negative number. Okay, so you may see the following written. You may see f of x is equal to the square root of x minus 6, but x has to be bigger than or equal to 6 for the function to work. If you put anything less than 6 into the function, then the function breaks. Okay, as I said, we'll also get more practice of this skill in lessons to come. So, thank you for watching.